Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this was the Ahasuerus who reigned over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. In those days, when King Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan, the citadel, that in the 3rd year of his reign he made a feast for all his officials and servants, the powers of Persia and Media, the nobles, and the princes of the provinces being before him, when he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom, and the splendour of his excellent majesty for many days, 180 days in all. And when those days were completed, the king made a feast lasting 7 days for all the people who were present in Shushan the citadel, from great to small, in the court of the garden of the king's palace. There were white and blue linen curtains, fastened with cords of fine linen and purple, on silver rods and marble pillars, and the couches were of gold and silver on a mosaic pavement of alabaster, turquoise, and white and black marble. And they served drinks in golden vessels, each vessel being different from the other, with royal wine in abundance, according to the generosity of the king. In accordance with the law, the drinking was not compulsory, for so the king had ordered all the officers of his household, that they should do according to each man's pleasure. Queen Vashti also made a feast for the women in the royal palace that belonged to King Ahasuerus. My name's Arthur, and I thank you for joining me as we begin the story of Esther. We've read Esther chapter 1 verses 1 to 9. Just to set the scene a little bit, this Ahasuerus was king of the Persian Empire at the peak of its power, about 450 BC. The Jewish people had been exiled first by the Assyrians 250 years previously, and then by the Babylonians 150 years earlier. The Assyrian kingdom had been overthrown by the Babylonians, and the Babylonian kingdom had been overthrown by the Medo-Persian Empire, and it had become stronger and stronger. So we find that at the peak of its power, its king was called Ahasuerus. There were several Persian kings who took this name. The biblical record says this was that Ahasuerus who reigned over 127 provinces from India to Ethiopia. So this was at the pinnacle of the Persian Empire, and follows on from the time of Ezra and Nehemiah. Ezra and Nehemiah were focused on restoring Jerusalem, restoring the Jewish people in Jerusalem. But the majority of Jews lived in the Persian Empire, dispersed across that empire, in various places. Some had been taken there by the Assyrians, and some by the Babylonians. And this turned out to be God's way of preserving the people, not putting all your eggs in one basket, but spreading them around, so that if things got tough in one place, they would survive in another. Consequently, they have survived 2,500 years in exile, even to our own time. The focus of this book is God's care for the Jewish people while they are exiled among the nations. Well, when Ahasuerus came to power, there was incredible wealth, and it seems that he is very conscious of that extreme wealth and wants to celebrate that wealth in his capital city, called here Shushan, but also known as Susa. And so he made a feast for all his officials and servants. With generally peace and wealth, people want to feast and party. What's the point of riches if you don't enjoy them? Ahasuerus celebrates his wealth with this tremendous party for his officials and nobles of the provinces, for the kingdom stretches from Ethiopia, the northern half of the African continent, to India, a huge area, and he wants to show it off. He showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the splendour of his excellent majesty for many days, 6 months in all, 180 days. And to cap it all off, he has a special feast for 7 days for all the people who are in his capital city Shushan, including the poor people of the community. They're all invited to come and see his magnificent wealth. And we have this description of how the court is laid out, with white and blue curtains, supported by silver rods and marble pillars, that there were couches made of gold and silver, on a pavement of alabaster, turquoise, white and black marble, and no plastic cups to serve the wine. It was served in golden vessels, each one individually crafted. So these were all the material things, how to make life comfortable, and had been carried out to an exquisite degree. But we have this interesting comment, drinking was not compulsory, because there was an attitude of freedom. The king's command to all the officers of his household was that they should do according to each man's pleasure. And so he was being generous, and we even have then the comment that Queen Vashti also made a feast for the women in the royal palace that belonged to King Ahasuerus. They were not included in the king's celebrations, so they had their own celebrations. Now on the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zethar, and Carcass, the 7 eunuchs who served in the presence of King Ahasuerus, to bring Queen Vashti before the king, wearing her royal crown, in order to show her beauty to the people and the officials, for she was beautiful to behold. But Queen Vashti refused to come at the king's command, brought by his eunuchs. Therefore the king was furious, and anger burned within him. Then the king said to the wise men, who understood the times, for this was the king's manner toward all who knew law and justice, those closest to him being Karshena, Shetha, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsena, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, who had access to the king's presence, and who ranked highest in the kingdom. What shall we do to Queen Vashti, according to law, because she did not obey the command of King Ahasuerus, brought to her by the eunuchs? For all the accumulation of wealth, King Ahasuerus carried with him the idea of the time, and we'll see that it's supported by the whole society, that his wife was his possession. She was just another object of beauty in his kingdom. And so, to cap off his party under the influence of wine, and wine is never a good influence, he orders Queen Vashti to come that he might parade her in front of all his guests and show everyone how beautiful she is. He wanted her beauty to shine forth, to cap off all the beauty that had been present in the couches and the curtains and the courtyard. Queen Vashti's beauty would excel them all and just show how great the king was. Well, Queen Vashti refused to be paraded as a prize bull or a prize cow before the king. This upset the king. He was extremely angry that she would say no to him. The king has a lot to learn. He has been thrust into this position. He loves the vanity of all the material things that are around him, and he even treats his queen as a thing to be put on display to show how wonderful he is and his kingdom is. But she refuses to come, and so he says, well, what does the law say we can do about this? The rules of law and justice are designed to maintain order in the kingdom, but when they are applied in a situation for which they were never designed, they lead to disaster.